Hello, my name is Matt McDonald. I'm with Moon Valley Irrigation, and today we're going to be going through the steps that are required to check your irrigation system. Okay, step number one in checking your irrigation system is making sure that your irrigation system is being supplied with water. The first point of contact from the water supply from your city meter to your home is right here, which is known as the vacuum breaker. This is usually attached to a hose bib located in either the front or back of the house. All you really have to do is just go around and check your hose bibs. Once you see this little guy right here, you know you found it. The only operation that needs to be checked on this vacuum breaker right here is to make sure that the handles are in the appropriate position to do what it is that you're trying to test for. If you want to make sure that your irrigation system has water, the handles need to be running in line with the pipe. If you want to shut your water off, the handle should cross the pipe. Sounds pretty simple. One of the things that are overlooked, especially if there was a leak and you've turned it off at the vacuum breaker, after you fix the leak, you go over to check the valve and the valve won't pass water. You need to go back over and check to make sure that the handle's in the appropriate position. Again, inline means that the vacuum breaker is turning on and will pass water as the valves turn on, and crossing the pipe means that the vacuum breaker is turned off and will not allow water past that handle. The vacuum breaker is designed to keep water that's in your irrigation system from flowing back into the water house, or the house water, and contaminating the water inside. Anytime that you're experiencing an irrigation issue, if you're experiencing a massive leak or no water coming from any of your irrigation, step number one should be to first check the vacuum breaker. If there are massive amounts of water coming out of your irrigation, away from the vacuum breaker, from an exposed line or where the valves are, you can stop the leak simply by turning off the vacuum breaker. If for some reason there is no water coming out of your irrigation system, since that is the first point of contact where water comes into your irrigation system, stopping to check there to make sure that the vacuum breaker is open might prevent too much time wasted on trying to diagnose problems when water might not be coming into the system. Okay, step number two of the troubleshooting process for your irrigation system is addressing the timer, making sure that everything's working appropriately. So you locate your timer. Normally is connected into the power panel of the house, and for any Moon Valley customers that have purchased irrigation from Moon Valley where we've installed timers, this will be the actual model that we have installed. This is what's known as the Hardy rain dial. Very, very easy timer to program. It's one of the reasons why we selected it. It's also very powerful. You can do many things off of this one timer. On a manual operation for your timer, first thing that we got to check is to make sure that all the programs are still programmed in, that they're still working properly. What we do, on the bottom dial, there is a off or stop selection, a set program selection, and a run or manual. If this dial is not to run or manual, your irrigation system is not going to run. That will be one of the first things that you want to check, just to make sure that that little dial is over there. If for some reason somebody comes over to do any kind of programming, or you do the programming yourself, this is one of the last things to remember to put back over into the run position. And it's a pretty simple mistake. A lot of people make it. I've made it about 100 times. So it's really good to check that first. Once you've checked to make sure that everything's in the right position, you move the dial to set programs and you inspect however many valves that you have running off of the program and how many days they're supposed to water and what times they're supposed to start. First thing first, check the first valve on program A. The dial on the upper left-hand corner of the programmer will tell you the different programs that you have available. You have programs A, B, and C. If you have, let's just say that you have turf and drip all set up under the same timer. Typically, you want to set up the drip on one program and the turf on another program because they have different watering needs. If you're going to inspect your drip system, and let's just say, for instance, the drip system is on program A, we keep the dial on program A and start to scroll through the different valves that are programmed for that program. Once you've inspected the programming of that timer, you should be able to see, as you turn the dial to the right, it will tell you the duration in the panel that gives you the LED readout. It'll tell you exactly how long that valve is supposed to run. As you scroll counterclockwise on the dial, you should have the day, should reflect the day that it is that you're looking at it. Today is Friday. This says Friday, so we know right now that so far the programming is correct. Then we transition through the different days. You want to make sure that as you're watering, the programming days that you don't want water to run should say off, and the days that you do want to run should say on. If you choose to have the days set specifically where you know every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday those will run, Monday, Wednesday, Friday should read on, everything else should read off. If everything is correct that way, then you know that the programming for those dates are fine. And lastly, in that check, you check the start times. Start time will tell you exactly what time everything is supposed to kick off for that specific program. Once you've checked all of that, you understand that everything's working, you return the dial clockwise back to current time, slide the dial back over to run or manual, and now we're ready to manually run our valves using the timer itself. Now that we've got it set to run or manual, I want to check valve number 1. When I turn the dial to valve number 1, this readout should say off. That's because at this time of day, this timer is not programmed to be running that valve, so it should say off. That way when you see it say off, you guys nobody needs to freak out. Just means that the valve is, or the timer is working properly. As soon as you're done checking the system, all you have to do is flip the dial back over to off. That will shut the valve off. If you have no other manual test that you need to do, all you have to do is return the dial back up to 12 o'clock, turn the system back to run or manual, and your timer will take over and do what it has to do on the times that it was programmed. There's one other way that you can run your system manually, where you can have it scroll through the entire programming itself instead of doing it on a valve per valve basis. Again, making sure that the dial is set dead center, pointing to the 12 o'clock position on the timer. Everything has been set to run or manual. There's a SemiAuto button, and what the SemiAuto button in the lower left-hand corner will do, it will manually start programs A, B, and C, and it will have the timer scroll through the entire programming. So if you only want to test for a short period of time, this is probably not your option. But if you feel that there hasn't been enough water and maybe we need to give it one extra day worth of watering, you can press this button alone and everything will start and go through the entire cycle. Okay, this is a typical drip irrigation setup that we have here. Right here inside this valve box, we have two valves. One of the first things that you want to check once you get inside the valve is checking the communication wires are connected the way they were originally connected and that nothing has been pulled apart. If anything has been pulled apart, it will affect the operation of your valves because the circuit has been broken. With the valves, turning them on manually, you've checked your timer, you've checked your backflow, you've checked everything, and everything seems to be working properly. If no water is coming out of your drip system, or if the water will not stop coming out of your drip system, this is where you'll pretty much be able to determine whether or not it's the valve. You've gone through, you've checked everything, and now at the valve, we're going to be turning on this valve right here. This is a rain dial, or this is a rain bird valve, and the solenoid goes directly into the top of the valve. Now that's the portion of the irrigation system that I told you receives the electronic impulse from the timer to open the diaphragm inside the valve and turn the diaphragm off. Right. With the rain bird valve, the only thing that's needed in order to manually turn on the valve is rotating the solenoid in a counterclockwise position or a counterclockwise direction until you hear the valve turn on. Once you've heard water passing through and you've inspected your irrigation system to see that water is actually coming out of the emitters, that lets you know that the valve is working properly. Then all you need to do is rotate it back clockwise until the valve shuts off. One quick note, in turning on the solenoid and turning off the solenoid, if you unscrew the solenoid too far, water will spray out of the top and you will not be able to get that solenoid back into the position that it needs to be inside the threads. If you close the solenoid down too far, you are running the risk of fracturing the body of the valve, thus breaking the vacuum system, and the valve will not work properly. That was how we check the drip system to make sure that it's running properly. It's that easy. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can feel free to contact me or any one of the nurseries at any time. You can also visit us at moonvalleynurseries.com.